Bonjour and good morning. Welcome to WASA Distance Education Center and PLAR Science. So we're into the fourth week or week 4 of term 1B. So after this week, we only have 2 more weeks, so week 5 and 6, and then we will be on our Christmas break beginning, well, last day will be December 20th, and then we are off from the 23rd up to, we come back on January 6th. So all students are welcome to join the radio Zoom classes. Remember, PLAR students should contact our PLAR counselor, Mary, at 807-737-1488. Her extension is 2224. Or you can email her at mary.mclaughlin@nnec.on.ca. Other students not in the PLAR program can contact, again, your local DEC, or you can contact Michelle at WASA, and her email is michelle.distant@nnec.on.ca. We will continue to hold our student draws. So remember, if you are a student and you are submitting work, then you will have your name submitted. Also, students who are working on multiple courses will have their names entered for each subject that you are submitting work for. So you get 1 for submitting work and 1 for getting a credit. Students can still register for independent learning or IL courses at any time during the school year. However, you must complete the course on or before June 13th, 2025. And for PLAR students, again, don't wait for us to call you. If you applied for the school year, you can either call us to let us know that you want to do the key questions. And if you want to do the key questions, then you will need the lessons from us. If you don't want to do the key questions and you want to challenge or take the culminating activity, then let us know which one you want to start with. So some students only need one PLAR subject, or other students need all 5 PLAR subjects. So tell us which one you want to start with. You don't have to do all of them. Let's say you want to do the culminating activities for everything else except for the English or except for the math. So again, that's your choice. The culminating activity is an open book test. So again, instead of doing the key questions in the lessons, you can do that. It can be emailed to you or to the DEC. You don't need supervision to do the test. Students can take the culminating activity home to complete. And if you are successful, so if you get 50% and above, then you will receive an equivalent credit for that culminating. If you do not pass the culminating activity, then the key questions in the lessons must be completed. And then you can retake the culminating activity. Students are permitted several attempts to pass the culminating activity. And if you're still not sure about trying the culminating activity, then contact either myself or Bonnie, and we can send you a sample test to review the format of the culminating activity so you know what to expect. Students choosing to complete the lessons and key questions in PLAR, you can expect that all the PLAR packages are the same. So if you have last year's version of the PLAR Science, you can still continue from where you left off. You don't have to start over. So for example, if you completed the lesson 1 from last year's PLAR Science, you don't have to start over with the 24-25. You just continue from where you left off. So 5 lessons for PLAR Science. On the cover pages, you will see that all the information that you need to get a hold of me is on that page. Same thing for the lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All my contact information is there. If you need more support in doing the culminating or the lessons, you can watch the classes. These are classes that have been broadcasted already. You can go to our YouTube channel. So I'll just show you here. This is what it looks like when you go to our YouTube link, choose playlist, and then you can see that all the classes for term 1A and 1B are in here. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 different classes. So choose the class that you want to watch. So for example, if you click on the math, then you can see all the classes that are in that playlist. The classes are named by lesson and key questions. So first it's named by subject, so this one is PLAR Math, then it tells you the lesson, and then it tells you the key questions that's in that broadcast. Make sure to click the subscribe button so that when new videos are uploaded, then you will be notified. If you don't have internet or Wi-Fi access, you can still request a USB of classes. Just let us know which PLAR or which course that you want to have access by USB. Again, it's named by subject, by lesson, and then by key questions. Once you're ready to submit the key questions or the culminating activity, you can scan your work by using iPhone Notes app or email or send through Messenger. You can take a picture and send it through Facebook Messenger as well. So you can see the difference between a scanned picture. So the scanned picture only takes the page, and then the picture will give you background images. So you can try that. If you're not sure how to do a scan using your phone or your iPad, let me know. Remember to send it to student work and then CC it to the teacher that's marking your work. So if it's science, so PLAR science, history, and geography, you CC it to me. If it's math or English, then make sure that you CC it to Bonnie at bosman@nnec.on.ca. You can also have your DEC scan or fax it for you. You can also drop it off at 74 Front Street. We still have our WASA outdoor mailbox on the side entrance. And if you have other concerns or questions, make sure that you contact one of us. So looking at the course calendar for PLAR Science, again, this is a guide. So it just gives you an idea how you can finish all of the key questions. That's if you're doing the key questions. It tells you that by week 4, you should be working on your lesson 2 biology. Remember, if you're choosing to do the key questions, try to do all key questions so that you can prepare yourself for doing the culminating activity. So here's the mark sheet for students who have chosen to complete the lessons. Now, if you get to lesson 3, for example, so you did lesson 1, you did lesson 2, and then you get to lesson 3 and you're finding that you're not having any problems with it, you can still say to me, I would like to try the culminating activity. It doesn't mean that if you start doing the key questions that you're committed now to completing all the key questions. You still have the choice of changing your mind and doing the culminating. So here is the culminating activity mark sheet. So it will show you that you still have to answer all parts, so chemistry, biology, astronomy, physics, and environmental science. Those are the 5 lessons. So those are the 5 topics that you will answer questions for in the culminating activity. So continuing with biology, as I mentioned earlier, here you have all the numbers that you need in order to get a hold of me at WASA. Notice that my Zoom link is also there. The meeting ID, so if you haven't downloaded Zoom, you would have to go to nneczoom.com, I think, and then once you download it, then it will ask for the meeting ID and the passcode. But those of you who already have it on your desktop, you just click on it and you just go to my Zoom link and it'll take you right there. So from our last class, we completed pages 3 to 5. We looked at the cell, prokaryotic cells versus eukaryotic cells, and page 6, the parts of a cell. So today we are continuing pages 7 to 10, organelles and their functions. So let's see how far we can get with lesson 2 this morning. Learning goals. Keep in mind what you will learn. I can explain the role of the cell and its organelles. I can identify the differences between animal and plant cells. Okay, let's do a quick review. So from our last class on Thursday, we said that the word biology comes from the Greek words bios, which means life, and logos, which means the study of. So when you take the 2 parts of the word and you put it together, biology means the study of living organisms. We also looked at the cell, and we said a cell is the basic unit that makes up all living things. It is the smallest part of a living organism that can work on its own, and cells are often known as the building blocks of life. We also looked at the cell theory. So the cell theory is a scientific theory, and it describes the function of cells and their properties. So these are the main claims of the cell theory. The first one is that all living organisms are made up of 1 or more cells. So whether it's bacteria or whether it's human, all living organisms are made up of either 1 or many cells. Secondly, the cell is the basic unit of structure and organization in organisms. And finally, cells come from pre-existing cells through the process of cell division. So looking at the first claim, that all living organisms are made up of 1 or more cells. So one cell is a single cell, so organisms that are made of only 1 cell. For example, we have bacteria, paramecium, and so on. These are 1-celled or single-celled organisms. Multicellular, these are organisms that are made up of many, many cells. So these are humans, plants, animals. Okay, those are examples of multicellular organisms. And we did up to key question 30 on Thursday. So let's just go back here just to double check. So we did do 27, what does the word biology mean? Key question 28, identify the 3 main claims of cell theory. We just looked at that, so you should be able to answer that one. Key question 29, what does unicellular mean? And then you have to provide 1 example. So make sure you read this question carefully. So for a unicellular, you have to give 1 example. For multicellular, you have to give at least 2 examples. Okay, so let's continue with the cell structure and function. And as I mentioned before, I gave you a link to, and you don't have to use this link, you can just Google it yourself, how to pronounce. So if you're not sure of how to pronounce some of the parts of the cell, you can go to how to pronounce, and then you type in the word. Now make sure that you spell it properly, and you can do that by looking at your lesson book. And then see this icon or symbol. It has the play button, and it looks like lines or volume. Then it will tell you how to say the word. Okay. So that's if you're not sure, or if you're curious on how to say the words in regards to the parts of a cell. So this is a diagram of a typical animal cell. So inside each cell are organelles, and these organelles have special parts and have specific jobs. So we have cytoplasm, cell membrane, mitochondria, nucleus, DNA, endoplasmic reticulum, lysosome, ribosome, and Golgi apparatus. So some of these, I think we went through 3 already. So let's quickly look at the cell membrane. So remember, these are different organelles found in a plant and or animal cells. So we said the cell membrane, also referred to as the plasma membrane, it acts like a flexible barrier around a cell. So it separates it from the outside environment. So it's like a fence between 2 yards, but what's different with this is this fence can move and change shape as it's needed. So the cell membrane, it lets helpful things like nutrients enter the cell and allows waste to leave, just like a gate in a fence, but it also helps keep everything inside the cell balanced and working properly. Okay, so it keeps some things out and lets some things in. Next one is the cytoplasm. So if you're following along in your book, we are on page 7 of your lesson book. Cytoplasm is the jelly-like substance, and it fills the space outside the nucleus, and it surrounds the cell's organelles. So it's thinner than toothpaste and makes up more than half the space inside an animal cell. So think of the cytoplasm like a cushion or a bubble that holds the organelles in place and keeps them protected. So you can see the cytoplasm just on the bottom of the slide there, it's moving. So it allows the organelles to move around inside the cell. Also, the fluid helps regulate the cell's temperature and pH level. So again, this can be found in both plants and animal cells. Okay, the third one, I think this was the last one that we looked at, was the nucleus. It is the biggest organelle in the cell because it holds the cell's DNA. So remember, I said DNA is like a set of instructions for living things. DNA is found in almost every cell, and it tells the cell how to work, how to grow, and how to stay healthy. So think of it as a recipe book or a blueprint. It carries all the information that's needed to build and run your body. It's stored, the information is stored in a special code made up of 4 letters, A, T, C, and G. And these letters are arranged in specific ways to give instructions, just like words in a sentence. DNA is passed from parents to children, which is why family members often look alike. So you can think of the nucleus as the brain of the cell. It's the control center. And it contains the genetic material. So it contains genes. So genes are the little pieces of DNA, again acting as instructions for making specific parts of your body or controlling how it works. You can think of genes like individual recipes in a cookbook, with each one telling your body how to make something important. So Genes are passed down from your parents, which is why you might look like them or share similar traits. Okay, next up is the nucleolus. So the nucleolus, its main function is to make ribosomes. The nucleolus is also referred to as the little nucleus because it's a small part inside the nucleus. Just like your brain is an important part of your body that helps you move, talk, and do other things by sending signals, the nucleolus also has an important job to do. Its main job is to make the small pieces called subunits that come together to form ribosomes. And ribosomes are like the construction workers of the cell. They help build the proteins the cell needs to function. Okay, next up is ribosomes. So they are the tiny structures in the cell where enzymes and proteins are made. So they follow their instructions from the DNA. Think of ribosomes as small factories that spread throughout the cell, producing what the cell needs by following a recipe from the DNA. Now, unlike other organelles, ribosomes don't have a membrane around them. Okay, so if you want to remember the function of ribosomes, they are the tiny protein factories that are found floating in the cytoplasm. Okay, next is the mitochondria. So these organelles, this is where food is broken down to release energy. This energy is stored in special molecules that the cell uses to power its activities. That's why they're referred to as the powerhouse of the cell. Think of the mitochondria as energy factories. They process food to create the energy that the cell needs to work. So each mitochondrion has an outer membrane and a folded inner membrane. So the folds provide a large surface area where energy storing molecules are made. Okay, they're the powerhouse of the cell. They convert energy into useful energy for the cell. Next is the endoplasmic reticulum. So if you're following along, we're on page 8 of your lesson book. So the endoplasmic reticulum is a folded membrane inside the cell that forms a network of connected spaces. Because it's folded, it can fit a large area into a small space. So think of it like a box of tissues. When you take the tissues out, they cover a big area, but they fit neatly in the box. So that's how the ER fits into the cell. It has two parts. First part is the rough ER, and that's covered with ribosomes that helps make proteins. And then we have the smooth ER, which doesn't have ribosomes, but it helps make fats and other materials, plus it removes harmful substances from a cell. The ER, or endoplasmic reticulum, works like the cell's delivery system, so it transports materials where they're needed. So you can see on the right-hand side where the rough endoplasmic reticulum is at work. Okay, it's the protein assembly line of the cell. And then on the left-hand side, you can see the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, lysosomes are organelles that contain special enzymes to break down and recycle things that the cell doesn't need, like old parts or food particles or harmful invaders like viruses and bacteria. So lysosomes are often known as suicide sacs because, again, they get rid of stuff that they don't want. So they break down food, they kill pathogens. They're referred as a cleanup crew of the cell because they contain chemicals that can break down large food particles, trash, and even old organelles. So think of lysosomes like taking apart a Lego set. when you break it down into pieces to use them again. Okay, next is the Golgi apparatus. This is referred to as the post office of the cell. It's like a stack of pancakes, so notice how it's stacked. It takes new proteins and fats, also known as lipids, from the ER. It changes or fixes them and then sends them to other parts of the cell, like the cell membrane or other organelles. In simpler terms, the Golgi apparatus works like a packaging center. That's why we refer to it as the post office of the cell. It gets materials from the ER, prepares them, and ships them out. So the packages it sends out are called vesicles, and they carry proteins to where they are needed in the cell. So why does the cell need it? Well, without it, many proteins would be incomplete or lost. Next up is the vacuole. So the vacuole is like a storage bag inside the cell. It is filled with fluid and surrounded by a membrane. It holds food, enzymes, and other materials that the cell needs. In simpler terms, vacuoles are like a fridge because they store things the cell might need later, like food or water. Now, in some single-celled organisms, a special type of vacuole helps by collecting extra water and pushing it out of the cell. Plant cells have one big vacuole that stores water and other substances to help the plant stay healthy. So if you look at your plants in your house, if the vacuole in your plant has enough stored water, then your plant will look nice and full. And if you have plants that look like this, like droopy and wilted, that means their vacuole is almost empty. So you need to water it. You need to put water water your plants, or they might look like this. Okay, in animal cells, the vacuoles in animals, they store waste. It can hold food for later use or waste for removal. Okay, the last two things we have is the cell wall and the chloroplast. So cell wall, this is a tough, rigid layer that surrounds the plasma membrane, giving the cell the extra protection and support. So think of it this way. If the plasma membrane is like a fence, the cell wall is an even stronger wall in front of it to keep the cell safe. The cell wall is thicker than the plasma membrane and is made of different materials depending on the organism. Now, only plants and some other organisms have cell walls. So this is a key thing. Animal cells do not have a cell wall. If you look at the picture on the top left-hand corner, these are bunches of celery. So when you bite in it, okay, it's made of tough cellulose. That's why celery is often hard to digest. Okay, and then finally we have chloroplasts. So again, this is an organelle that's only found in plant cells. It comes in different shapes and captures sunlight so that it turns it into food or glucose for the cell. Now, this food can later be used by the mitochondria to produce energy for the cell. So think of the chloroplast as a solar-powered battery. So it stores energy from sunlight for the cell to use later. Chloroplasts are green because they contain a green pigment called chlorophyll. That's what gives plants their green color. They are only found in green parts of plants. Okay, so if you're looking at your plants in your home, that's why they're green, because they contain the green pigment called chlorophyll. So differences between animal and plant cells. So they're not exactly the same because we just said that plant cells have some parts that animals do not, and that's the cell wall and chloroplasts. So first, the cell wall, we said, is a stiff outer layer that surrounds the cell membrane in plant cells. It is made of non-living material called cellulose. It is stronger and more rigid than the cell membrane, and it's what helps plant cells keep their shape and stiffness. Chloroplasts are found in the cytoplasm of plant cells. We said that there's a green pigment called chlorophyll. That's why plants are green. Chlorophyll is needed for photosynthesis. This is the process that plants use to make their own food using sunlight. So most chlorophyll is in the leaf cells of green plants. So make sure you highlight it or underline it that animal cells don't have chlorophyll, which means that they can't make their own food. Another thing that plant cells have and animal cells have are vacuoles, but they differ because the vacuoles in plant and animal cells differ. In plant cells, they usually have 1 or 2 very large vacuoles. So here's the vacuoles in a plant cell. See how big it is? So there's the vacuole. But in animal cells, they have many small vacuoles. So let's see. Here they're smaller. Where's the vacuole here? Oops, that's not the vacuole. I underlined or circled the wrong thing. So the plant cell, this is the big vacuole here. So in animal cells, they have smaller ones, and they might have more than one. And you can go to the useful links. One is the virtual microscope lab, and then this one, plant cells, and then the third one is the study of animal cells. So those are just short videos that you can look at yourself if you want to do a bit more research on it. Okay, let's look at one of our key questions. So remember, with our key questions, you don't need to use internet to look up the answers. It's all in your book. The YouTube links are just for watching or getting more information on some of the topics that we have in lesson 2. So the third, or the key question 31, what you have to do here is explain the role or the function of each of the following organelles. So what I'm interested in is for you to tell me what it does for the cell. Not what it is, but its role. So what is its job? So for example, the first 4, vacuole, nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, and Golgi bodies. So the function for a vacuole, let's do one of these. So vacuole, okay, it stores food, okay, enzymes, okay, and other materials. needed by the cell. Okay, I'm not telling you what it is, but I'm telling you what the role of the vacuole is as an organelle. Then the next set is nucleolus, ribosomes, lysosomes, cytoplasm, mitochondria, and cell membrane. So 2 marks each, and there's 10 of them. Let's do one more here. Cytoplasm. So again, we're interested in what its role is, or what the function of the cytoplasm. It acts as a bubble around the organelle. Holding it together. That's its job. All right, so you should be able to try the other 8. The other 8 terms or organelles. Key question 32. It says identify and describe 2 parts of the cell that only plant cells possess. So we know that there's 2 parts that can only be found in plant cells. So we just did that one. We know they are the cell wall and the chloroplast. These are 2 things that can only be found in a plant cell. Key question 33 you can also do. It says, what substance is found inside the chloroplast? So the substance found. So tell me what the substance is. Then it says, what is it responsible for? So the second part of the question is, it is responsible for, then tell me what that is. Okay, next up is the role of a cell membrane. So for a cell to work properly, it needs substances to move in and out. So this movement happens through the cell membrane. And the cell membrane has tiny holes in it. So some substances can pass through these holes, and it can be done through a process called diffusion. So here's what it looks like before diffusion and then after diffusion. So think of it like a sponge. You know, the sponge with lots of holes in it. When you soak it in water, it lets water in. So you can see all the little dots that's outside the cell membrane, and then look how much it's filled in there now after diffusion. So remember, the cell membrane controls what goes in and out and how much of them can enter or leave the cell. So for example, dissolved nutrients and oxygen are allowed to move into the cell, and then waste like carbon dioxide can only move out. Now the movement of water through the membrane is called osmosis, which is a specific type of diffusion. So if the amount of water entering, so amount of water going in and leaving the cell isn't balanced, the cell could swell up or shrink. So depending on the situation, just like we talked about your plant, the vacuole holds water. So in here you can see that this is a hypotonic solution. That means more water outside of the cell than inside. Therefore, water will move into the cell by osmosis. This causes the cell to swell. Hypertonic, more water inside the cell than outside. which means that the water will move out of the cell by osmosis, and this causes the cell to become softer. So you can see it's shrinking. Okay, and we did our key questions 31 to 33. So we'll start our next topic. And you can turn to page 13 in your lesson book. So page 13 is about the 7 life processes. So living organisms need to carry out specific activities to stay alive. These activities are called life processes. So life processes are also the main characteristics of all living things. So here's the 7: movement, reproduction, sensitivity, nutrition, excretion, respiration, and growth. So we're going to look at each of those closely. The first one is nutrition. And nutrition is just taking in and using food. Now, ingestion happens during nutrition because this is the process of taking in food, which means that animals cannot produce their own food, they have to get it from external sources. Plants are different because they can produce their own food through photosynthesis. However, they do absorb essential materials such as water from the soil. So after you ingest it or after you take in food, then you have digestion. And digestion is the breakdown of food into forms that the organisms can use. So both plants and animals have to digest their food using special chemicals that can convert it into usable forms. In many animals, digestion takes place in the stomach and the small intestine. In most plants, digestion happens where the food is made, okay, and that's in the leaves. So you can see here on the bottom, just to emphasize that plants make their own food using photosynthesis, whereas animals feed on other living things to get food. And then you have fungi and bacteria feed on dead plants and animals. So that's how they get food. Second life process is respiration. Now, respiration is the process of releasing energy by combining oxygen with food that has been digested. So during respiration, oxygen breaks down the food, producing energy for the organism. This process also creates water and carbon dioxide as waste products. So if you look at respiration, you breathe in, then you breathe out. Animals take in oxygen from the air or water. Plants breathe differently. They breathe using photosynthesis. You can see plants' respiration. Okay, they get oxygen, goes in. When they respire, they let out carbon dioxide. They let out energy. In larger land animals like birds and mammals, oxygen is taken in from the air through breathing. The oxygen travels to the lungs where it moves into the blood. The blood then through the vascular system carries the oxygen to all the tissues and the cells in the body where it's used for respiration. Okay, next is excretion, and that just means getting rid of waste. So excretion is the process of getting rid of waste products that the body no longer needs. So as the body carries out its functions, it produces various waste products such as carbon dioxide, water, and excess salts. These wastes must be removed from the body to keep everything working properly. In humans, excretion happens through processes like sweating, breathing out carbon dioxide, and urinating to remove waste through the kidneys. So animals excrete harmful substances such as carbon dioxide, sweat, and urine. So for living organisms, this is an important thing. Waste substances have to be removed from the body. Okay, next is movement. All living things move, even plants. So movement is a key characteristic of living things, though it may be more obvious in some organisms than in others. So all living things can move in some way, even if it's not always easy to see. Why is movement important? Well, because it allows organisms to find food, escape danger, and reproduce. It's easier to see or to observe movement in animals because they move to search for food, find shelter, or avoid threats. However, some organisms, like plants, move in less noticeable ways. So you can see different types of movement here. Animals are moving from place to place. Locomotion means they change in position by a living thing. With plants, we think of movement. Well, let's think about this one. Plants grow from tiny seeds, but we think about plants as not moving. But plants grow upward, so that's movement. Okay, down into the soil and outwards. So think of trees. They might not be moving, but their branches change position. So if you have plants at home, notice how if you have a plant that's facing the window, you may notice that the leaves gravitate toward, so it's leaning to one side. That's why you might want to turn your pot around so that both sides get sunlight. Okay, and the next one is sensitivity. Okay, so we'll look at this last one. This is where it detects changes in the surroundings. So all living things can sense and respond to their surroundings, and that's crucial for survival. So for example, if an organism can't find food, or if they notice a predator, it won't live for long. So animals use different sensory organs to detect changes in their environment. So they're using their 5 main senses that most animals rely on: sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. While it's harder to see in plants, they can also sense their environment. So for example, I just mentioned this, plants can detect sunlight and they can grow toward it. Sometimes they even twist into unusual shapes to capture more light. Plant roots can also sense water and they grow toward it. So here's an example of a human showing sensitivity. So this person is running away from the bees. So the ability to detect or sense changes in the environment or stimuli, and they respond to it. This person hit their finger or their thumb instead of the nail, so you could see that it's in pain. So it's responding to what just happened. For plants, here's a good example. The Venus flytrap is a plant that has a unique way of sensing its environment to capture prey, usually insects. So its trap consists of 2 hinged lobes that close when triggered, and then each lobe has tiny sensitive hairs on its surface. When an insect or spider touches these hairs, it triggers the trap to close. So that's how it finds its food. Okay, we're going to stop here and we will continue life processes on Wednesday. So again, if you're working on your key questions, make sure you ask me if you're having any problems. Miigwech.